America just dropped 3 economic bombshells that is sending a massive warning to the rest of the world. We can see that Donald Trump has actually just initiated multiple different executive orders that have made some really interesting changes, not only to the retirement accounts, but also to the gold market. We're going to be talking all about the tariffs that Donald Trump has slapped on multiple other nations. We're also going to be looking at the nations around the world that are just quietly responding to Trump's executive orders. Because again, we've got a lot more adoption happening this week in places that you might not expect. But before we get to any of that, I want to play a quick clip from Donald Trump's right-hand man, Scott Bessent, because it might give us a little bit of a clue to what America is going to do next.
Big on digital assets. So Trump administration has made digital assets a priority. Past administration starved and almost made extinct a lot of these companies and pushed it offshore. So what we want to do is apply the highest U.S. regulatory and AML standards to digital assets, especially.
Okay, so we can see that Trump's right-hand man, he's getting a little bit bullish on Bitcoin. But I want to break down what exactly happened this week in America, because there were 3 economic bombshells that I think changes a lot, okay? So the first has to do with this new change to the retirement accounts that Trump's just pushed through. Essentially, he's allowing this $43 trillion market to now invest into Bitcoin. I know it sounds like a big and bold claim, but we can see this is the executive order, democratizing access to alternative assets for 401k investors. When we scroll down here, we can see this one sentence is the one that I think has potentially opened the floodgates. We can see holdings in actively managed investment vehicles that are investing in digital assets will now be able to access the retirement accounts. So Trump has literally opened up this US retirement account market for Bitcoin. So we can see in total, there's $43 trillion in the retirement account. But of course, it's a little bit more granular than this. So we can see that the 401k plans, this is an $8.7 trillion market. This is now the market or the subset of the overall $43 trillion retirement accounts that now has access to Bitcoin. Again, it's a little bit complicated, it's a little bit convoluted, but this is the takeaway. We now have $9 trillion that could flow into Bitcoin. Now, again, my assumption here is that this total $43 trillion retirement account, every single subset of this will eventually get access to Bitcoin. So again, in the title of today's video, I said $2.57 million Bitcoin coming sooner than you think. If you just assume all of the 401k money wants to flow into Bitcoin, you run the numbers, you've got about $8 trillion that wants to flow in. When we use that multiplier effect, we can see very quickly that if we have $8 trillion coming in with a 6x multiplier effect, that would take Bitcoin to a $48 trillion market cap, divide by 21 million coins, and you've got a $2.57 million Bitcoin. This is, of course, is a crude assumption because this assumes that all of the 401k money wants to flow into Bitcoin. But again, I don't think it's outlandish to assume that 8 trillion out of this 43 trillion wants to flow into Bitcoin. That is just 20%. And again, I know that sounds a little bit crazy and a little bit out there, but this week has been a crazy week because the second economic bombshell that America has dropped is this one right here. The Fed is publishing reports that is suggesting that they want to revalue their gold, and this is going to be their budget neutral way to buy $800 billion worth of Bitcoin. I know it sounds crazy, but let's not forget, one day later, Trump actually imposed tariffs onto Switzerland and its gold. Let's kind of break down what's happening here because I think this could be bigger than most people think. This is really, really interesting. And we can already see, oh boy, this is going to be a funny headline. There's already a little bit of misinformation, so to say, in the market. Check this out. White House to clarify gold tariffs after ruling sparked chaos. So this new executive order that Trump pushed out this week, it has caused a little bit of chaos in the markets. We can see here, gold hit by a surprise US tariffs, unleashing new turmoil. We can see, I want to take a look at the charts just after we take a little peep here at the headlines, because we can see there's been a lot of action in the markets this week. Bitcoin right now at the time of recording, I think we are pushing up towards $120,000 again. We're near 117. And when we check out gold, we can see, I'm not going to lie, that's a pretty bullish chart. Gold looks like it wants to rip a lot higher, a lot higher. I want to take a look at gold in US dollars for you guys, because this is, yeah, that's a really bullish chart. Gold looks like it wants to go to 5K, to be honest with you guys. So, of course, when Trump put these tariffs on gold, we saw a pretty big move this week. If I actually get a little bit more granular for you guys, gold moved up here from 3,200 to 3,400. Again, it's a small move in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's just another sign that the world is now beginning to look for its alternatives. It's now looking for its very own escape hatch. And of course, that is what gold is. And that is also what Bitcoin is. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the Fed's new plan to revalue gold higher and whether or not this could be used to buy Bitcoin. So this week, the Fed dropped this report saying, look, we could revalue gold and we could essentially make $800 billion by doing this. Today, the price of gold's at $3,500 an ounce, and the gold that is on the US's balance sheet is valued at like $40 an ounce. So what they could do is they could revalue the gold on their balance sheet from $40 an ounce to $3,000 an ounce, and they could pocket all of that difference. So they would have about an $800 billion profit from this simple revaluation. And multiple countries have actually revalued their gold. There's actually been 5. Let's zoom in and take a look at the 5 countries who have done this previously. We can see it is Italy, Germany, Curacao, Saint Martin, and South Africa. So this is really interesting because America right now is saying the quiet parts out loud. This is the report. Over the past 30 years, 5 countries have done this. And this is what I just read out for you guys. The gold on America's balance sheet is only valued at $42.22 per ounce. And let's not forget, America is one of the biggest holders of gold in the entire world. I want to pull out a comparison chart for you guys so you can just see what I'm talking about here. But America is one of the dominant players in the gold market. We can see this is the gold held by central banks around the world. We've got America, number 1. They are the top dog when it comes to gold on the balance sheet. We've got Germany, officially in number 2. I do say officially in those quotation marks because, of course, we're going to talk about China in a minute and the gold that they are rumored and then officially holding. Of course, what China says publicly isn't necessarily what China does privately. But before we get to that, let's just cover the facts. We know America is sitting on 8,133 tons of gold. Right now, this is only valued at $42.22 per ounce. Simply making this revaluation, this would net America 800 billion big ones. And do we really think that America is not going to use that $800 billion to buy Bitcoin? Because let's not forget, the Fed published that report this week. What else did the Fed do this week? They hired a full-blown hardcore Bitcoiner. I know it sounds crazy. Let's check this out. It happened. I didn't believe it when I first saw it, but it is true. It's happened, and we now have a Bitcoiner in the Federal Reserve. We can see breaking, President Trump just officially appointed pro-Bitcoin Stephen Miran to the Federal Reserve Board. Now, Who is this Stephen Moran? Is he just a political peacock jumping on the coattails of Bitcoin trying to get popular? Again, we always tell you, never trust a politician. How many politicians over the years have we seen come out and say, oh, I'm a peacock and Bitcoiner. I'm pro-Bitcoin. I'm pro-liberty. I'm pro-freedom. They get voted in, and what do? They pull the rug. Someone let me know in the comments what they thought of my rug pulling sound effect. It wasn't my best work. I apologize. But I don't think Stephen Moran is one of these rug pulling politicians. We can see this guy has been a Bitcoiner for some time now. We can see comments from 2022 and 2023 commenting on Twitter. Bitcoin fixes this. It's kind of wild. One of our own is out there shit posting on Twitter, and he was doing it when it was very unpopular to do so. Again, who was in leadership in 2022 and 2023? It was Sleepy Joe. It was Crazy Lizzie Warren. They were at the helm. They were the top dogs. And this guy, Stephen Moran, he didn't care. He was shit posting on Twitter with the rest of us. This is why I think this is a little bit bigger than most people think. Donald Trump appoints a pro-Bitcoiner on the Federal Reserve Board, and on the same week, the Federal Reserve posts an article, a deep dive, a report where they say, hey, why don't we revalue our gold like the other 5 countries have done it over the past 30 years, and we'd net $800 billion. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to suggest that they're probably going to revalue the gold and buy $800 billion of Bitcoin. Now, the obvious question, how much Bitcoin can they buy? I'm glad you guys asked. Let's take a little bit of a peek at one of my favorite charts in the entire space. That is this one right here. We are looking at the number of Bitcoin on exchanges, which continues dropping like a rock. I think this is the only chart that matters in the Bitcoin space. Screw your technical analysis. Screw your diminishing returns BS. Screw your power laws and your power opinions. Your stock to flows. Throw them all in the bin. This is the only chart that matters. I know how much of an unpopular opinion that is. Everybody wants to believe. They want to believe in the power law. They want to believe in the manifestation that is $180,000 Bitcoin by 2026. I'm here to tell you, as much as it gets me in trouble and it's an unpopular opinion, I think that thing's BS. I think the only thing that matters is supply and demand. And when this chart hits zero, when there's zero Bitcoin on the exchanges, nobody, not even this crazy kid with a wild haircut, will know what the price of Bitcoin will be. I truly have no idea. We've got nation states with money printers openly saying they want to buy as much Bitcoin as they can possibly get their hands on. America's price agnostic. They don't care about some stupid power law. Again, this is where things get crazy. This is where stock to FOMO comes into things. Speaking, I can't just go out there and say stock to FOMO without actually showing you a chart of the only chart that I think is directionally correct in Bitcoin. That is, of course, the Bitcoin stock to FOMO chart. Forget your power laws. That's just a power opinion. your diminishing returns, they're all, I don't think any of them can actually predict what is going on with Bitcoin. I want to show you what I think is the only accurate way to model Bitcoin, and that is the stock to FOMO chart. Can't find the chart anywhere. I apologize, guys. I really can't find it. I'm struggling here. But essentially, it models what happens when Bitcoin hits that inflection point on the exponential S-curve. This is what I think every single model gets wrong in the Bitcoin space. All of these stock to flow models that we're looking at right here, all of these power opinion charts that we're looking at, I think they're analyzing Bitcoin as if the asset hasn't changed. They're analyzing Bitcoin as if the same data from 2010, 11, and 12 can be extrapolated and applied forward. I just don't think that's true. Again, we're $2 trillion asset today. I don't think we're going to see diminishing returns for the next 500 years for Bitcoin to get to $1 million a coin. It just doesn't check out in my book. I just don't think the maths. It doesn't work like that. I don't think, I don't know how that's a controversial opinion, but I just don't see how an asset with a $900 trillion TAM can start seeing diminishing returns when it's at $2 trillion. Do the maths, guys. We're at 0.2% of the globe's wealth. And people's trying to tell you that we're going to start seeing lower volatility from here, guys. Yeah, we're going to start seeing diminishing returns. Come on. Let me get back on track. Let's talk a little bit more about what America is doing and what these other nations are doing in response to what America is doing, because things are starting to heat up here. Things are starting to get a little bit wild and a little bit, let's just say, interesting. I do want to talk a little bit more about America, but I think Michael Saylor could lay it out a little bit better than I could ever do so.
Their own currency to buy Bitcoin wins, right? Like, Tom, look what MicroStrategy did. We basically issue our own currency, our stock, and we buy Bitcoin. What happened? We went from $1 billion to $100 billion market cap is what happened.
The first country to print their own money wins. Again, when you print the money, you've got to buy something that actually can't be inflated. And that, of course, is Bitcoin. So again, what are these other countries doing? Who are the South American countries and others that are slowly but surely getting into Bitcoin in a pretty big way? I want to break down exactly what they are doing in a moment, because again, this is pretty big news as well. It looks as if other nation states around the world are finally responding to what America is doing. And America is making a very, very, very big play for Bitcoin. And I do not think they're slowing down. This is why you guys need to actually buy your Bitcoin while you still can. I think the best place to buy your Bitcoin, again, this is the Bitcoin Well. They're a great Bitcoin only exchange. I encourage you guys to check out. We have links in the description that will take you to the Bitcoin Well. And again, get started buying Bitcoin over there today. And once you've bought your Bitcoin, please do not forget to put your own Bitcoin in your own self-custody. If you do not hold your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, you don't own your Bitcoin. Now, again, I think there are a ton of great hardware wallets to use when it comes to self-custodying your Bitcoin. I've used them all. I think they're all great. Again, I think a Trezor is a great option for somebody looking for a great Bitcoin-only hardware wallet that is completely open source. Again, they have open source code base. You can verify all the lines of code that you want if you want that kind of extra security. Again, I think Trezor, they have a great option. They've got the Trezor Safe 3, the Trezor Safe 5s. You guys can even get a discount on a Trezor if you use the link down below in the description. Now, again, if you want something a little bit more advanced and a little bit more fancy, I have another option for you guys to check out. You can get your hands on a Ledger. Ledger has a ton of different options. Again, I know some of you guys want a touchscreen hardware wallet. It's easier to use than the ones with the little buttons, which is why I recommend the Ledger Flexes or the Ledger Stacks. And you guys can get $10 of free Bitcoin if you use the link down below to buy a Ledger. And they also do have the Ledger Nano S's and the Ledger Nano X's. So again, please do what the nation states cannot do, and that is take self-custody of your Bitcoin. And the final reminder I've got for you guys is to, once you've got your own hardware wallet, please back up your Bitcoin the way it should be backed up, and that is on titanium. Go and get as many titanium plates as you want from Stampseed. And again, you can get 15% off anything you want to buy from those guys. You can use that promo code Luke15 to take advantage of that cheeky little discount. Now, again, let's talk a little bit more about America and the other nation states who are now responding to America. Because for some time now, everybody's always been talking about what happens if America starts buying trillions of dollars to back the $35 trillion of debt that the country has. Well, guess what? A little country called Montenegro is kind of doing exactly that. We can see Montenegro is proposing of issuing $500 million in government bonds to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But they're not the only country making a little bit of a move this week in Bitcoin. Let's not forget, we have Bolivia, a little country in South America, out there reporting that transactions in Bitcoin are up by over 530% in the past year. And do not forget, the central bank in Bolivia has been publishing white papers on Bitcoin. So we've got a lot to break down this week in the realm of adoption. But let's first begin by telling this story with what Bolivia is doing. We can see here, they call Bitcoin a reliable alternative to fiat in El Salvador. So we can see Bolivia has signed an agreement with El Salvador to promote Bitcoin as an alternative to traditional currencies amid its economic woes. So again, this is really interesting because typically when countries blow up their own currency, what do? They typically blame it on someone else. Again, what did America do in 2022? Oh, the massive inflation that we're seeing, it's not because of the fact that we increased our balance sheet by 50% in 2020 when we locked you in a cage. Oh, no. The reason why you have inflation is Putin's price hike. It's insane, okay? Now, I think the accountability taken here by Bolivia, this is, I don't say this often about governments or bureaucrats or politicians, but this is pretty admirable. They're nearly being honest. They're openly saying, hey, Bitcoin's a solution to our trashy currency that we've blown up. I think this is kind of insane when you think about it. Let's take a little bit of a deeper dive at what exactly is going on. This here is the official letter that the Central Bank of Bolivia has written. Now, again, my Spanish is a little bit dodgy, but El Banco Central de Bolivia is literally informing the public, hey, Bitcoin's a great solution to our trashy currency. This is massive. This is just some of the headlines that I think people are not paying attention to because, again, everybody's so hyper-focused on America. And, again, I get it. It's a $30 trillion economy. It's the biggest economy in the world. 100% agree with all of that, right? I am not discounting that. But when we've seen central banks start publishing white papers and partnering up with El Salvador to learn more about Bitcoin, these are the headlines that I think just get missed. So we can see here, Bitcoin investment banks is coming to El Salvador, says the government regulator. And we can see here, this is a little bit interesting for multiple reasons because this is going to pave the way. This is giving countries like Bolivia the blueprint. We can see the new law will allow investment banks which can underwrite companies and issue securities to hold Bitcoin. Now, again, what's happening in El Salvador right now? Is El Salvador buying Bitcoin? Are they listening to the IMF's demands of them? I honestly don't know anymore. It's getting complicated out there. I haven't been to El Salvador in a year. I have no good information to give you. All I will say is to the skeptics out there who are saying, oh, El Salvador's bent the knee. We were right. We knew El Salvador couldn't stand up to the mighty IMF. I wouldn't be so confident. I think the fact we're still pushing through laws like this in a country that's supposedly bent the knee to the IMF, I like to see things in a positive light. And I think this is optimistic. I think El Salvador is doing the best it can. And I think it is it's milking the cow of the IMF for all it can. Because let's not forget, it has gotten its hands on billions of dollars of loans from the IMF. So, hey, I won't go down that rabbit hole yet. I'm going to hold on to that rabbit hole for the moment. But what I think is interesting is El Salvador is straight up, from what I can see, helping other countries in South America guide them along, so to say. Bolivia is openly modeling what it's doing in its country on what El Salvador is doing. So we can see, let's have a look at how much adoption is surging. What are the numbers here? Give me the numbers. 3 months after lifting the crypto ban, Bolivia's central bank reported crypto trading reaching $46 million. It's 15 million big ones a month. Now I'm more interested by this, doubling the monthly average. So again, big numbers, we get it. Bolivia is a small country. So I think $46 million is not insignificant. And we can see here, wow, we're up to $294 million of volume as of June 30th, 2025. So this is, again, not slowing down. This is increasing. And it's increasing so much that even the central bank is even having to eat its own words and say, yeah, you know what? We banned Bitcoin, but now we can't stop it. Its trading volume's up by 500%. I think that's massive. I think this is actually much bigger than most people think. This is bullish. Maybe that's why the price of Bitcoin right now at the time of recording is slowly but surely pushing back towards $120,000 a coin. We're at 116 at the time of recording. Maybe I've got the price of Bitcoin behind me. Is it that shoulder? It is. We had a little bit of a pumper this Saturday morning. We moved up in price. I think this is bullish. And again, I just think now that we have all of these central banks around the world starting to say the quiet parts out loud, this is bullish. And again, these central banks are only being able to track the Bitcoin that they can actually see being traded on public exchanges. Again, a lot of you guys give me flack. A lot of you guys say, Luke, I don't want to give my information to a government to get my hands on Bitcoin. Hey, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I've got a stack of non-KYC Bitcoin too. If you want to get a stack of non-KYC Bitcoin, I'd recommend you check out the guys at Simple Mining. Everybody knows that mining your own Bitcoin can be the best way to get your hands on non-KYC Bitcoin. Okay, again, mining Bitcoin, it comes with challenges, but I like what Simple Mining does because they can offer you guys hosted mining services where you don't need to buy a big mining rig and plug it in at home and, you know, go through all of that hassle. You can do hosted mining with them, or you can straight outright buy miners from Simple Mining. So again, use the link in the description. And if you sign up with that link, they're going to offer you 1 year of free repairs on your miners. So again, get your hands on some non-KYC Bitcoin through mining. And actually, while I'm talking about non-KYC and getting your hands on Bitcoin, again, I would just like to remind you, Bolivia is not the only central bank in South America right now starting to make moves in the Bitcoin space. Again, we've got El Salvador, but let's not forget, we've got Argentina. We've got, right now, we have Panama. We have a lot of these countries in South America that I think are now starting to see the light. Again, I love to remind you guys of this chart that was floating around in 2021. When the price of Bitcoin got above its all-time high in 2021, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, and a host of other countries started to pay serious attention. Mexico was talking about adopting it. Nicaragua, Panama, Venezuela, Brazil, and Argentina. Now, of course, not much materialized after the price of Bitcoin was attacked in 2021. But now that I think we could be entering a little bit of a period where Bitcoin is sustainably making higher highs and higher lows, maybe we're going to see a lot of these rumors start materializing into action. We do know Brazil last week started talking about pushing forward their initiative to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And again, like I remind you, Brazil is a top 10 country around the world in regards to GDP. They're goddamn huge. They're massive. They're not a small country. Okay, again, it could be fair to say, Luke, I don't care about Montenegro, and they're potentially thinking about issuing $500 million of government bonds to build a strategic reserve. Fair enough. Fair play. I'll give it to you. It's Montenegro. It's a country you probably never heard of before. All right. But the fact that we're seeing so many different countries around the world start to push forward, I think we are now entering what I believe is the exponential phase of Bitcoin adoption. It's not slowing down. This is the other piece of news I wanted to show you. Dubai government officially approved retail trading for options this week. We did a video on this. And again, this is just another signpost that we are now starting to reach that phase of escape velocity. I think that's where Bitcoin is right now. I think it's reached escape velocity. I don't think there's any turning back. We've got over 35 countries openly talking about creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve. It's no longer one or two or three strange countries or strange CEOs like Michael Saylor. Adopting Bitcoin is now the cool thing to do. It's now the mainstream thing to do. I've actually got some more data on just how many banks are adopting Bitcoin right now. And again, the fact that we've just got the president just pushing through executive order after executive order on Bitcoin, I just don't think there's any way that this bull run doesn't melt faces. So we can see just in the past week, we talked about that executive order in the retirement accounts with 401ks. Trump also signed another executive order to stop debanking of Bitcoin. We've elected a supporter of Bitcoin onto the Fed board. And now we've got central banks cutting interest rates. So the Bank of England cutting rates to 4%. And now there's a 93% chance that the Fed also cuts in September. There is no going back. Bitcoin is now stomping itself into the traditional financial world. It is dominating the ETF markets with BlackRock. Banks all around the world are now starting to custody Bitcoin. I saw a really interesting headline earlier that made me pay a little bit of attention. Okay, here we go. We now have Bitcoin products by 25 of the biggest banks in America. Have a look at this. We've got Citigroup. We've got the US Bank. We've got BNY Mellon, State Street. These are huge banks. JP Morgan Chase has announced trading. This is much bigger than most people think. Let's not forget what billionaire Michael Saylor said a couple of years ago. He said there's three things that Bitcoin needs that if we see happen, we'll send Bitcoin to $5 million a coin. Spot Bitcoin ETFs, we've got them. Number two, FASB fair value accounting, we've got him. Number three, Michael believes we need to see the biggest banks in America offer trading and custody of Bitcoin. Guess what? We've got them. We've got 13 out of the biggest 25 banks in America openly embracing Bitcoin. Again, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you, do not trust your banks with your Bitcoin. I cannot promise that they are not going to rug pull you. Again, they will dangle the carrot. They will say, hey, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they're dangling that carrot in front of you. Let's not forget the rule change that happened a couple of weeks ago. You can now get a mortgage using Bitcoin as collateral. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac was forced to allow this, but why? I don't know, but I think it's strange that in the fine print of that announcement, they said, caveat, you can only do this if you put your Bitcoin on a centralized exchange. Their words, not mine. Not even paraphrasing. That's a direct quote. Centralized exchange. You know what I say about centralized exchanges? Again, do not trust them. If you want to borrow against your Bitcoin, do not put it on a centralized exchange. I always recommend you use a decentralized exchange like Firefish. Firefish, I think, is the best Bitcoin borrowing company because they do not take custody of your Bitcoin. They're just like the Bitcoin Well, the exchange that I recommend. They're Bitcoin only. They do not take custody of your Bitcoin. They use multi-signature vaults. And they're even going to give you a 30% discount on your fees on your first loan if you use a promo code LUKE. It's L-U-K-E. It rhymes with puke. Super easy to remember. You'll never forget it. And again, you will not regret using Firefish. I got a couple of loans on Firefish. I think they're a great product. They're a must-needed product. We should not be bending our knee to the bankers. Even though, hey, it's bullish. Don't get me wrong. The bankers are bending the knees to Bitcoin. It's bullish. It's great. But never trust them. Okay, we should not be trusting the bankers. You should trust yourself, and you should arm yourself with the tools that I always teach you about. Again, like we mentioned earlier, All Night Hider put a link to all of the show partners in the lives chat. Thank you for that, All Night Hider. Again, if you want to mine Bitcoin, check out that link for simple mining down below. If you want to buy Bitcoin, check out the link for the Bitcoin Well. Check out the link for Trezor or Ledger if you want to buy your own hardware wallet. All Night Hider slapped all the links in the live chat, and they're also down below. Now let's have a little bit of a look at what you guys think is coming next. Daniel says roller coaster ride. That's coming. Info Ranker, I agree. SoFi will probably be the 15th on that list. Again, all of the big banks on this list, they will be forced to adopt Bitcoin much sooner than you might think. It's coming. It's happening. Because, as Chris says in the chat, compound interest destroys every currency over time. And it's not just compound interest destroying currencies over time. Our own governments are actively planning on destroying our own currencies. They're admitting it. They're saying the quiet parts out loud, which is kind of insane. I actually filmed another deep dive video yesterday. If you guys didn't see it, I had a look at what was happening in Europe, in England, and what is coming to the rest of the Western world. And if you didn't check out that deep dive, highly recommend you check it out. We looked at all of the scary headlines that most people don't want to look at. And again, I get it. They're horrifying. It's wild that the Bank of England is publishing white papers openly admitting that they're going to channel retail savings into capital markets. That's what Europe is saying. Look at the red box. There's an urgent need to channel retail savings into EU priorities. Let me paraphrase that. What's an EU priority right now? I have to be really careful with what I say, but it's not to fund peace. Let's just say that. So they're going to steal your money to fund EU priorities. Strange. And now we've got the Bank of England publishing white papers on how to, quote unquote, execute a bail-in. Let me paraphrase that. A bail-in is stealing your money out of the bank. So again, if you didn't see that video, highly recommend you check it out. Once this live stream is finished, I'll put a link up on screen that's going to take you straight to that video, somewhere around there. With that said, I got 1,012 of you guys tuning in live on this Saturday afternoon between Twitter and YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this one, I go live at least 3 or 4 times a week, so subscribe so you don't miss those, and I'll see you all in the next one. Enjoy your weekend. Maybe you'll see me tomorrow.